Find our Mall of America street team all summer long at our station events. Come find us and ask us about our MOA mystery gift cards where everyone is a winner. See where we'll be next at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Welcome back. Final hour, 9 to noon. Nordwin for PA. 6:30 tonight. He's hanging out with me today, Max Fuller. You're going to get to hear him. Pre-game party starts at 6:30. He and Parker Fox handling those duties. Pre-game then continues at 7 and tip-off shortly after 7:30 p.m. I'm going to be on my couch watching it. I don't know where you'll be, Trent Tucker, but you're going to be somewhere watching this thing as well. Are you going to be in attendance tonight, or do you like to sit in the man cave and just soak it all in?
Sit in the man cave and soak it all in.
No, it's going to be awesome. Hopefully soaking in.
Max has become a star, man. Everywhere I go, everybody talk about Max and Max and Max.
He's all over the place.
He's big time.
He was holding court at Mall of America. He's on TV. Are you on TV at all today?
Yeah, I'll be on Fox 9 today. Yeah, I think I've literally been on every channel this week, just this week.
It's always nice to walk into a building around greatness, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's how I feel when Trent Tucker is in studio, co-host of In the Zone Saturday mornings with Dave Sinekin, the professor of hoopology. The nickname has been coined and well earned. I'm gonna start here, and I talked to you about this off the air just a couple of minutes ago, but it's something that really it hits me, and that's managing the moments. And I was talking to you about Chris Finch, and I felt like just the way that he managed moments in the clutch. There was a missed free throw inside a minute and a half or so. He gets the timeout as Rudy. I see Rudy get the rebound, and I'm like, no, that's not good timeout.
Right.
And he's able to make some of those changes that he himself had talked about earlier in the series, game 2, for instance, that I needed to call a timeout to reset, get Conley back on the court, etc. I just felt like managing the clutch moments in combination with a pulse from Carl really kind of tells a fair amount of the story from the other night and why the Wolves are still in this thing.
Well, you have to be able to manage the moments, and you have to make adjustments inside the game. And you hear a lot of people talk about making adjustments from game to game, but sometimes you have to make adjustments minute by minute. And all of a sudden, the defense that you thought would work in the first 4 minutes may not be working, so you have to be able to switch up.
Yeah,
knowing that the players can adapt and adjust, and that's how you put your team in a good situation to win playoff series.
And with Mike Conley talking to the media after the game, he went on about the coach, talking about what it meant to the team when Finch is hobbled right now. He's got this knee thing. He's sitting second row. He's basically, we got to get like college football style signage up so that he can communicate with Mike Nori at various times. But he hobbles his rear end up to midcourt, and he's all over. I think it was Foster himself, gets teed up, and Conley's like, that got us going. Like, that got the juices flowing. Coach is hobbling up. He's fired up. Like, this, we can't lose this game. And just kind of moments like that where coaches can choose their spots. I mean, whether it's Phil, you've probably seen it many times in your career as a player as well, where coaches can be strategic about when to pull certain strings, and Finch was pulling all of them pretty well the other night.
Well, he must be on some pretty good pain medication to be limping up and down the court like that. But it's a good sign because you want your head coach to be in charge in critical moments. And throughout this entire season and this run so far at playoff time, he has been that voice of reason.
Yeah.
And when you see your coach who is willing to go through pain and agony to give you guys a chance to win, that's a very, very good sign for any team.
What did you think of, we can get to Carl. Carl was the big talker into Game 4. He comes out of Game 4 as a massive talker, those 4 straight triples that he had. But Anthony Edwards kind of into the game saying, you guys saw me be passive. That's effectively what he said. I don't think he used the word passive, but you see me just kind of drift away. I go off to the corner, et cetera. You're not going to see that again. And then you see a guy that takes 25 shots that, put himself in a spot for that 22-foot dagger, that 2-pointer late in Game 4. Anthony kind of learning on the fly as a 22-year-old, but finally having, I guess, that breakout or that star-style game that we've seen, unfortunately, too much of from Luka and Kyrie.
Well, your best players are effective when they can get shot attempts at the basket. And the only way you can have a productive night or a big night is that you need to get looks. And the Wolves did a very good job of moving him around so that the double team couldn't take those shot attempts away. But all season long, the main guy, for this team to be where they are, sure, Anthony Edwards is a number one guy, but you need that number two guy. And Karl Anthony Towns, who have been consistent throughout the entire year and the first two rounds of the playoffs, allowed the Wolves to get to the Western Conference Finals. He struggled the first three games, got off to a slow start, but he was big in game number 4. And going forward, you're just hoping now that he has found his rhythm at the right time for this team.
Can it be just one game? I mean, Karl, you've seen this since he was drafted. Very, very maligned. Everyone loves Cat. Everyone loves the projection of what Karl could be. And then, it's almost like the Kirk Cousins conversation where we got the Kirk camp, we got the Cat camp. We got the Kirk haters, we got the Cat haters. Uh-huh. And each are looking for any morsel that they can use to promote and amplify their voice in this grand argument. But for Karl, despite I'm one of the best shooting big men in NBA history. Well, when he goes 0 for 8 from deep in Game 3, people will use that against him. He goes 4 or 5 in the second half the other night. Now it's starting to have credence again.
Yeah.
For a guy like Karl that you've watched his entire career, and in very rare occasions has had a 3-game slump like he had, can it be just one game to get Kitty Cat moving the right way again?
As a shooter or as a scorer, you just want to see the ball go to the basket. And when you see the ball go to the basket a few times here, there all of a sudden now your confidence is different. For some reason the basket seems a little bit bigger. And the game slows down. And the plays that are being ran now are giving you the opportunity to get those good looks. And I think he has to come out with the mindset in game number 5 is that I'm going to the basket first. I got to have a balance to what I do offensively. If he comes out and takes 2 or 3 or quick 4 3-point shots and he's 0 for 4, that's not a good sign for this basketball team in Game 5.
So it's he gets those 2 charging calls. And I think it was Maxi Kleba that had both of them, at least one of them I do remember. And he's does he have to fight through that? Are you fighting through, well, I'm lumbering, I'm freight training my way to the hoop, and I'm not getting the call. One of them, I think even Finch said with PA yesterday, he's like, one of them for sure was a charge, but one of them I felt like maybe he should have been headed to the line.
Right.
The mentality of Cat, he can't let that kind of thing affect him.
He's got to keep playing. I think the one thing he needs to stay away from is the silly fouls. The fouls when you're switching out on Luka Doncic and he's at half court with his back to the basket and you reach in and slap him when a guy is not trying to make a play going toward the basket. Those are the type of fouls that he has to stay away from because he is so valuable to this team. And when he and Rudy sometimes run that 4 and 5 pick and roll, they allow Rudy to get to the basket now for some easy slam dunks. Karl Anthony Towns is a very talented offensive basketball player. His defense has picked up during this playoff run. He's so important to what the Wolves do on a nightly basis. They have to keep him in the game. He has to understand he needs to stay in the game as well.
All right, let me ask you this, though. Is in the heat of the battle, I think it's easy for me. You played and you know this, so you're the one that's the expert in this conversation. I will say from my couch, are you kidding? What are you thinking, Karl? What are you thinking when you do something so dumb like that? And this isn't 22-year-old Karl. This is 8th or 9th season Karl. And I lose my mind and I'm apoplectic. But I also think heat of the battle. I think what makes guys like Karl great is the fact that they're probably not thinking, that there is an unconscious competing element to the game where heat of moments, and we need to ask him to be more thoughtful in these spots. But part of what makes athletes great is this is intuitive. This is pure instinct. This is see ball, get ball, shoot ball, win game, to the point where it doesn't feel fixable to me. Like, is Karl a guy that we actually will have to live with this? And it becomes a talker if they lose the series. but it's also not something that's going to go away.
Well, I'm just like you. When I see him do some of those things as well, I'm asking the TV, why are you doing those things?
The TV never talks back.
He never talks back to me. But no, I mean, he's going to have to become, at some point in time, a little bit more aware of time and situation, because basketball is a thinking man's game, especially at the NBA level. And you have to be able to play the game from the neck up. It's because, yes, I might be able to challenge this guy this time at the rim, but I got 2 fouls. So make a play, but don't put myself in a situation to foul, because we have so much time left in this basketball game. There's going to be so many possessions left, and I need to be a part of this mix. I have to understand how important I am to this basketball team if we're going to have a chance to come back and knock off the Dallas Mavericks.
Double T, you mentioned it, the basketball is a thinking man's game, and Kyle Anderson's IQ was on display all of Game 4. I mean, we all saw that clip of him kind of directing that play where Karl Anthony Towns got the three. He played phenomenal defense on Luka. I don't want to call him a Luka stopper, but maybe a Luka stop gap. He's been incredible, and he couldn't even, barely could get on the floor in the Denver series, but he's been integral to the Wolves' success in this series. Talk about what Kyle Anderson is doing well for the Wolves, and specifically in his defense on Luka Doncic.
Well, he gives them another player that understands his role, and he can make other players better. It's because he has a skill set that is very unselfish. Maybe he guards Luka very well because they both are slow.
Moving at the same speed.
But, the pick that he put on the big guy to free up Karl Anthony Towns reminds me of a game that I was in 1993 against the New York Knicks. We were down by 2 in the closing seconds of the fourth quarter, and everyone in the world knew that Michael Jordan was going to take the shot. But B.J. Armstrong slid to that same corner that Karl Anthony Towns was in. Slow-mo sets a back pick on Karl Anthony Towns, man. Scottie Pippen did the same thing on Doc Rivers to free up B.J. Armstrong, who knocked down a three-point shot to give us a chance to win. Ooh. And I said, I've seen that play before. And when you talk about being able to think in the moment and understanding, certain situations on how you can put your teammates in better positions
the awareness
to be successful. And by you being unselfish, what Kyle Anderson did that night was huge. It won't show up in the box score, but if you're a guy that understands basketball, you really appreciate the moment.
Can we force Luka to have to do something on the defensive end of the court? There was a moment in Game 4, and it was really the first time where I can't remember if there was a pick or a switch involved, but Luka picked up a couple of quick fouls. It was like in a 90-second frame of the game, second half, maybe third quarter, we'll say. And he actually had to defend Trent. He actually couldn't just hang out and drift off into the mist and disappear and effectively rest on the court before he goes back down and tries to dagger us with the three. Is there a way we can make that a part of our game where we're forcing him to defend in some spots?
I don't think so at this time. Is because, how the Wolves offense is set up. Their primary 2 guys are Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards. And they play a position that Luka does not play. And he doesn't have to defend, those positions.
So he can kind of hang back.
So you're not going to all of a sudden put Jaden McDaniel or whomever plays that spot in a heavy pick and roll type situation.
Right.
You can't make those adjustments. What Jaden McDaniel has done is make big shots after big shots and timely shots to allow the Wolves to stay in the game. And if you catch Luka in a switch, then you have to recognize at that moment, clear it out and just go attack him to see if you can force him to pick up a foul from there. But you can't change your entire offense to try to put Luka in a situation where he has to defend.
That was the key, and it was impressive that Anthony kind of identified it and acknowledged it, where in the fourth quarter he was driving on Luka several times. He can win that race every single time, and that if anything, for me in those moments, the most frustrating fact is he didn't pick up a foul. Anthony was getting to the rim, he was working through contact, and we weren't getting those and ones, Trent. And I'm just begging for that whistle, and it never came.
Well, you're hoping that on both sides that the officials are going to allow contact to be a part of the game coming down the stretch for both teams. And they're not going to call, the ticky-tack fouls. They're going to allow the players to decide the outcome of the game. And I've always said when the officials go unnoticed, it's a well-officiated game.
Yeah, and sadly, the officials did not go unnoticed in Game 4 with what? There were 3 or 4 extended video reviews.
Especially game number 3.
Game 3 as well. Yeah, absolutely.
When the guy
was that Tony Brothers?
Game 2 when Jaden McDaniel was fouled on the baseline, lost the ball out of bounds, and Dallas goes to the review to challenge the call.
You can review that he touched it last, but then Minnesota can't challenge that it was actually a foul, I think all of us watching agreed that it was. But Jaden touched it last, and then Luka did his thing. Did you like that? Was it inevitable that it got chippy in Game 4? I mean, Wolves' season is on the line, but I thought overall it was more physical maybe than it had been through the previous 3 games. After whistle stuff, it was Derek Jones gets teed up. I think Cat was teed up in that game as well. Like, do you like seeing that? Is that desperation, or is that now we finally we got to hate our opponent a little bit if we're going to keep moving on?
Well, it's desperation for sure, and also it's establishing your territory, and we're going to bump you guys around a little bit. We're going to make you feel us. We're going to reach out now and touch someone, and I thought the Wolves did a very good job of knocking the Dallas Mavericks off of their comfort spots. And when you play against great players like Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, if they're allowed to get to those comfort areas time and time again, they become too hard to deal with, especially when the game is on the line. And you're just trying to bump them just far enough away so that they're uncomfortable. So now coming down the stretch, your defense can stand up and make some plays to close the game out.
That's Trent Tucker in studio with me, Nordo, 9 to noon. We're going to take a short pause, another short segment with Trent in terms of just what Game 5 could look like tonight. It feels like it's going to be another absolute nail-biter to the finish. But the last time they were at Target Center, the Wolves staked a nearly 20-point lead, had the opportunity to blow these guys out, couldn't do it. Can they do something like that tonight? We're going to talk about that next segment as we roll through the final hour, leading you up to eventually tip-off tonight. Cannot freaking wait. Wolves and Mavs Game 5 at Target Center. Max Fuller's producing. This is The Fan.
Be one of the first to see The Acolyte before it releases on June 4th. Head over to our contest page and register for your chance to win a pair of passes to see this new series from Star Wars early on June 3rd at Marcus Theater in Oakdale. That's KFAN.com, keyword contest to enter.
That's Max Fuller. I'm Nordo. Trent Tucker with us in studio for one more segment. We were talking off air. Emotions running high, playoff time of the year, things not going the team's way, trade everybody, fire the coaches, and burn the whole thing down. This seems like a group that likes each other. Huh? And how much in the end, it's been the age really for 15 years plus of the big threes, the dynamic duos, all of those things, and decisions made here. And now we're wondering, is there going to be a team out there that'll draft Bronny just in hopes because they can get LeBron as part of that draft pick, those sorts of things? You have those conversations about team construction. How important is it that, frankly, just on a base level, these guys like each other? These guys like playing with each other. It's not truly fantasy basketball where you can just take this guy out, put another guy in, and just say, well, the net rating's better, and here are the analytics, and so therefore the team's just going to be better. I mean, I feel like this group is super closely knit.
That's huge. When teammates get along, especially off the court, that is huge, because most guys are professional enough to put any personal feelings aside to do their job on the court. But when you have guys who like each other away from the game, that's invaluable, because that doesn't happen often. And for a team that have veterans and guys who are young and new and coming in from all different walks of life, and they can find a way to coexist off the court, that's special.
It matters. And this is a team, I think, that has succeeded in part because of that chemistry. Mike Conley, I've used him a couple of times today, but him talking about how these young guys have really propped him up, right? I mean, he's certainly closer to the end than the beginning.
He's an old head.
And he's an old head. One old head to another.
Right.
and so, kind of the idea that, playing with Anthony Edwards, completely different outlooks on life, specifically outlooks on their careers, right? Ant might think they can do this thing every year. And Mike's like, well, hang on. It doesn't necessarily happen like that. It's been a couple of years since I've been in a conference final. But just kind of the base level, something so simple and meaningful is just they get along.
Well, and it's nice to be able to cross over in the age difference. When you look at Mike Conley, who's been around for 16, 17 years, and Anthony Edwards has been in the league for 4.
Yeah.
That generational gap is totally different. And how do we vibe and connect together? I might like to wear a shirt and tie to the game.
Right.
What the fashion now is totally different, because when you see guys who are hurt and they sit on the bench, well, they got on hoodies or they got on this, they got on that.
Yeah.
So they're selling their brand. But during my time, 17, 18, 19 years ago or 20 years ago, when you were hurt, you looked like a guy that was working on Wall Street. And so all of a sudden now you got this new generation coming in, this new mindset, and you got all this social media and all these different things that kids are doing now. How do I fit in with that? How do we find a way to coexist? And for this team to be able to have, age differences like they do have and find a way to get along and mesh as a group, like I said before, they're special.
Yeah. Was there anybody early in your career, specifically with the Knicks, where, you're fresh, it's early 80s. I forget what.
82.
82. Okay, perfect. Was there anybody that you either teamed up with during your time with the Knicks or faced where it's like, this was somebody that you were watching on TV? I think about that sometimes, too, specifically in the NBA, where it is such a star league. These guys are larger than life, physically and certainly social perception-wise, where it's like you're a young cat in the league playing for the Knickerbockers, and it's like you watch this guy on TV as he's in the twilight of your career, and just kind of the amazing moment getting to play with some of those guys. You played with Jordan. I mean, you've certainly been next to and bumped elbows with and helped contribute with some of these guys. But was there a moment for you like that earlier in your career?
My first NBA game, Madison Square Garden, is sold out. It's the Mecca of basketball, the world famous arena.
Yeah.
And my first game, I'm on the jump ball circle, and I take a look to my left, and there's Dr. J.
Oh, come on.
And we played against the Philadelphia 76ers. And then all of a sudden, you get into the jump ball circle, and he sticks his hand out, and he says, hey, so young fella, welcome to the league. And I was like, wow. So the jump ball tap goes up. The ball was tapped by Bill Cartwright, and the ball is going out of bounds. And Dr. J takes 2 strides and grabs the ball before it goes out of bounds with one hand.
Just palms it.
Out of the air. And then turns and takes one dribble and dunks the basketball. I was like, this is real big boys basketball here. I said, now, I done play a lot of basketball from high school to college and against a lot of good players, but I haven't seen this before.
No, that's different universe territory.
And I was very, I was very lucky to have mentors and guys who were unselfish, who were 10, 11-year, 12-year veterans that was willing to lend their knowledge, to allow me to navigate through difficult times and understand the things I had to do on a daily basis to be prepared to play at this level. If you're not playing a whole lot as a rookie, it doesn't mean that you don't continue to work, when you're away from the game. And they taught me how to keep myself in shape, how to keep myself informed. And when I got my opportunity to play, I was ready to help the team out.
Last kind of back in my day or just when you were playing question, it was announced earlier this week, Bill Walton passed away.
Yeah.
And I admit that is before my time, Trent. And, I can read about it. It's like 10 seasons, tons of foot injuries. But wow, when this guy was healthy, he was unbelievable. I mean, I was born in 84, which I think like he was maybe playing his twilight seasons with the Celtics, wins that title before he retires. Did you ever cross paths with Bill on the court or off the court? What'd you think of Bill Walton, who guys, in my generation, I think of him as the awesome broadcaster, the entertainment aspect of Bill Walton, but you saw him as a player.
As a kid growing up in the late 60s and early 70s, UCLA was the college basketball team that everybody wanted to watch.
Yeah.
And if you played basketball, you were hoping one day that would be the college that you would have a chance to go to. And just watching Bill Walton as a college basketball player, other than, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you hadn't seen a better center in the history of the game. And I watched his championship game when they played at the University of Memphis. In the title game, he went 21 or 22. He understood the game. He was a great offensive player, great defensive player, very unselfish. And Bill Walton was larger than life, man. He was somebody that if you ever had a chance to sit down and spend 5 minutes with, he brought a perspective of the world that sometimes you never thought about. But in '84, when he made that run with the Boston Celtics, they beat the New York Knicks in Game 7, and I was in that Game 7. But it's a tough loss for a lot of people because if you got to know Bill Walton, he was a special guy indeed.
Yeah, and that's all I've heard over the last week. Dave Pasch, his longtime broadcast partner, we've had him with PA multiple times, hoping maybe at some point he would join to share some Walton stories. But we were better for knowing Bill and what he gave to the game. Final couple quickies here for you, Trent. I mentioned it to tease kind of into from last segment is Game 2, Wolves hosting Mavs. You get up to that 18-point lead, somewhere in that stratosphere, and then things just changed, and they couldn't hold on to it. We had just watched the Wolves advance from a series, effectively, of blowouts, one way or the other, in a lot of ways. They couldn't hold on to it the other night. Is there an element to this type of game where it's like you want, like if you're the Wolves tonight, to make a statement in this series, we're back, we're alive? Is it got to be an early haymaker? Like how do you? I guess let me stop rambling aimlessly. How do you see Game 5? Let's make it easy. How do you see a Game 5 laying out tonight for the Howl?
Well, the momentum for sure is on the side of the home team, but they have to come out with the right mindset and understand it's going to take 48 minutes to get the job done. Every possession is critical. If we get up to an 8-10 point lead, we have to manage the game, especially at the end of quarters. We can't allow Dallas to get 2 or 3 baskets, to close out quarters. Like you saw in game number 2, you're up by 18 with maybe 2 minutes and change left, and you just stop playing.
Yep.
You stop playing.
And 18 became 12 into the half.
And all of a sudden now the Dallas Mavericks feel very good about themselves, so you have to manage time and situation and understand that this team we are playing against, they have 2 guys who are very good, and we know they are good enough to beat us. So when we have a chance to extend that lead, we have to come down and force them to play defense. Being up 18 in the NBA today is not a big margin anymore because of the three-point shot and how the game can be played so quickly. And
if you're Luka, you get those 4-point calls.
Right, yeah. And so from a Wolves standpoint, maturity and closing out quarters would be very critical.
Is there, with Anthony Edwards' game, in a game like tonight, in a game like Game 4, any game, him being 22 and just not being in a spot of sweating a moment, is there an element of freedom there, like an ignorance is bliss type of thing for a 22-year-old like Anthony coming into a game like this?
It can, but at this stage now, he's been in the league about 4 years. He has to understand that when we have a 4 or 5 or 6 point lead, especially in the fourth quarter, there are some chances that you just can't take. Like in the other night, you're up by 5. He dribbles the ball into traffic after the team plays hard on the defensive end. It's a turnover, they score.
Yeah.
See, that's a lost possession. And he has to understand that in certain moments, it's that I have to make sure that we get a good shot. We get a good shot. This possession is so critical, especially when your team fights hard on the defensive end for 24 seconds to stop a tough opponent, and now you got a 5-point lead with a chance to extend to 7 or 8. You have to get a good shot at the basket. The worst thing that can happen to you in that situation is a turnover, is because now it's a lost possession. So I think the more he grows and understand those situations better, it's only going to be a whole lot better situation for this team going forward.
How much are you monitoring Derek Lively's status for this game? That felt like something the Mavs kind of missed out on in Game 4, had the neck strain, with the knees from Carl, and he took it. That was
2 knees, right?
That was a tough one.
He took 2 knees.
He might actually come back and admit at some point that the knee to the head was actually the less painful one than the one he took earlier. But how much do you manage kind of as you're picturing this game, lively, the impact he had? I think some of the role players had trouble shooting and making shots in games 1 and 2 at Target Center. So, seeing that, what Lively brings with this quote unquote new school Lob City, what do you think about stuff like that?
Well, he's a major part of what they do in terms of how they play team defense, and he finds good spots to play off his wonderful offensive players. But the major key is that can Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, continue to bring their A games?
Yeah.
And if they can bring their A games, I'm not worried so much about what the Dallas Mavericks can do, because we have seen them before. We know that containing Luka and containing Kyrie is very important. But for the Wolves during this playoff run, starting back with the Phoenix Suns and knocking off the Denver Nuggets, their best 2 players have been the best 2 players in the series. And if they want to continue to play basketball and have a chance to play again on June 6th, their best 2 players are going to have to be at their best.
You are the absolute best, my friend.
Thanks,
I appreciate you coming in studio, and you've been joining our show a bunch over the last few weeks. We're all just glomming on to, first time in 2 decades, and here we are, the chance for the Howl to continue this thing with a victory tonight. Thanks for coming in studio.
Thanks for having me.
That's Trent Tucker. You can hear him not only with 9 to noon and around the way as we continue this Wolves run, but Saturday mornings all the time. The reliable Trent Tucker joining Dave Sinekin Saturday mornings in the zone at 8 a.m. Final segment, Max and I will take you to the finish line. Final segment, 9 to noon, is next on The Fan. Joy and pain. That's a nice way to kind of sum things up. A little more pain than joy over this Wolves series. Congratulations once again, PWHL Minnesota, housing and hoisting the Walter Cup in the inaugural PWHL season. Taylor Heisey, the playoff MVP. So whether it's Ken Klee, it's Natalie Darwitz, everybody associated with PWHL Minnesota. Champions, and walking the streets of St. Paul, it sounds like tomorrow, for some sort of congratulatory, celebratory parade.
It's going to be sweet.
It is going to be sweet. Tonight's game's going to be sweet. Maybe tomorrow, while you're hanging out celebrating PWHL Minnesota, you're thinking about what Saturday Game 6 would look like if the Wolves are able to handle business. You're going to be on the radio tonight at 6:30, Fan Line.
Yes, sir.
This is, as we've done this a couple of different times over the course of these playoffs, Max, final segment, last couple of minutes. Final segments, 9 to noon, by the way, brought to you by Casey's. Casey's, tremendous partners with The Fan. You hear Common doing spots, but they also bring you the 9 to noon show wraps. When I fill in, I do not write the wrap. Now, Max, anytime.
I need to do that one of these days.
Anytime you want to, you feel free to do so. The key is it's kind of formulaic. Take a couple of shots at the host.
Yep, got to.
Make a couple of weird comments about Charch. 2 or 3 things that happened throughout the show, and then end it with some sort of inside fan-related joke that nobody understands except for like 5 people.
Like Rosie bringing sandwiches.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. So if you can rhyme with deli, I think you got this one hooked up. But thank you so much, Casey's. Speaking of good food, Elite Pizza, food and fuel deals with Casey's Rewards, fountain and frozen drinks, medium, just 99 cents. Love you, Casey's, but no wrap today. But just kind of emptying the notebook a little bit, the hootie hoo, okay, the T-shirts, the market on those, kind of took a sharp fall.
Yeah.
But then there was life.
There's back. Hooties are being hooed once again.
Yes, they are. And Bridget and Shakopee, nobody's hootie hooing more than she is right now. So what do we think about tonight's game?
I'm feeling good about tonight's game. I think the Wolves found something there. And I mean, we saw it in games 1, 2, and 3. It was the little things, It was late game execution. It was Anthony Edwards for a couple of those games, Karl Anthony Towns for 3 of those games just not showing up. And when they're there, we're live, we're good. So, and we've been getting stellar performances out of all the side pieces. I don't want to put it like that, but the Naz Reeds, the Kyle Andersons, and everything like that. So as long as that continues, as long as the role player guys keep hitting their shots, and Anthony Edwards shows up, and we need Karl Anthony Towns again. It can't just be a 1-game thing. We need him to stay in the game. Hopefully avoid the silly fouls like Double T was just talking about. But we need a big game from all of those guys and just keep the playmaking going. That's one of the things we've talked about over and over again with this Kyle Anderson piece, is that he's another playmaker for this Wolves team, along with Mike Conley, along with Anthony Edwards, because that's what the Mavericks have. They have playmakers. They have smart guys. It's not just the athleticism of Kyrie Irving or the shot making of Luka Doncic. It's the speed at which they're processing the game. It's the playmaking. It's knowing where to be and when, and all of those guys have bought in completely on those guys being the leader. It seems like the Wolves got their confidence back. Anthony Edwards got his confidence back after last game. He'd been looking a little indecisive and whatnot. So as long as we got that confidence, and it seems like everybody's believing. Ant's saying we can do this. Naz is saying we can do this. And what holds even more weight for me, I mean, obviously I'm happy that Ant, Naz, and the other guys are believing it, but Mike Conley saying, we're going to bring this thing to 7. We're going to do this. That gives me chills, Nordo. So I think the Wolves win tonight, and I don't think it's close. I think it's reminiscent of Game 2, except we keep our foot on their necks and we blow them out.
Old head
Mike Conley, the OG.
Thanks to old head Trent Tucker for being in studio. Thanks to Ben Lieber and Alan Horton as well. This is, and I'm glad the simplicity, ultimately, after 2 segments of conversation, the way that Trent put it, and I look at it, it's truly just 2 guys. You nailed it with Naz and Nikhil hitting a couple of shots, and
great to see him back.
Great effort play from him, grabbing that rebound, loose ball the other night, all that stuff. It's Karl and it's Anthony. For a team the last 2 series that is 1-4 at home. Pay off the home crowd tonight. I know that the fans are going to bring it. It's time for just 2 guys. Just don't, Jaden in the corner, Naz here and there, Kyle Anderson. What an orchestra that he is directing and conducting on the court. It's Anthony and it's Karl. Those are the 2 that were focused tonight. And tomorrow morning we're going to be celebrating a Saturday night Game 6.
Let's go! Oh! Let's go, Nordo!
The program is next. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Show, or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.